Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I am Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mark Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 100.
Yeah.
We made it. So cheers, Donovan. We have a special bottle of wine, which is from 2017, which is when the podcast first aired. And I think it was also a present given to me by one of our favourite guests, Steve Serda. So double connection there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and we've broken the budget tonight as well, and we've got Krispy Kreme donuts.
Very conveniently located between us.
Yeah. So if you hear us chewing, sorry for that. So yeah, we made it to 100.
Yeah.
We had our doubters, my mother included, but...
Oh, really?
No. But yeah, it was kind of a bit rocky for a while there where we weren't really recording and did we have topics to get to 100, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a little bit of a, will we continue at some point, and we've continued, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a big thank you has to go out to all of the listeners because, I mean, obviously I think we'd still do it regardless of the audience and the size and everything, but it's good to hear the comments that we do get back, and yeah, people recognize you because you're from Real Trail Talk, and you especially because you've got such a distinct voice.
Yeah, I have had people who don't know what I look like, but then they hear me talk and they're like, I know you.
Yeah. You're either from that band or from that podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I mentioned in the last episode that I had a bit of a story about the 100th episode. So I'll tell it now, and it goes back to 2019, and we must have been like episode 80 something, I want to say. And Aaron and I were doing a hike to patch up a bit of my end-to-end, my sexual end-to-end of the bib. And he asked just out of the blue, like, oh yeah, so what are the plans for your 100th episode? And I was just like, we're going to end it. That's it. Because I thought it was going to be like in the next year. But then, yeah, it's 2025 now. And 6 years later, we've got here.
Yeah. You know, I think that particularly early on when we had like a lot to talk about because, we had nothing, everything was new. So, we were sort of hitting it really hard. And then, COVID, I think, was a real sort of full stop for a while there. Having a kid as well really made that challenging, but suddenly I think I feel more optimistic and like that we have things to talk about again, so it's good to have that renewed interest and excitement about the pod.
So for the 100th episode, we've got a few questions here that I've kind of come up with as like a recap of our time and our experiences like with the podcast and also in general with hiking. And then I put the feelers out to our listeners for a bit of a Q&A session. So we've got quite a few questions from you listeners. But also one of them that my youngest niece asked, which I'll include in the first section of our questions, was... where is it? How did the podcast come to be?
Well, it was your idea.
It was.
You hit me up about it.
Yeah, because I was like, I really want to do a podcast. And then I didn't know that you had all this recording equipment and you were a musician. And I was like, oh, this is going to be expensive to set up. Yeah. And you're like, hey, I've got all this equipment.
Yeah, I was like, don't worry, don't spend any money.
Yeah.
I've got everything.
Yeah, I think all up, apart from like the hosting fees, I think we bought another, what was it? When one of your bits of equipment broke, the mixer.
Yeah, the interface that connects to the computer.
Yeah.
That's like the only thing that we had to buy. And I think that there was a little bit when I went to Queensland.
That's right, yeah. And we needed something there, which was all pre-COVID, wasn't it? It's not like all the prices of podcast equipment went up significantly because everyone wanted one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of cool. And it's fun to hear because there's really nothing for WA hiking at all in terms of podcasts. The websites are obviously there, but it was a very niche market that we were feeling, but it's been good fun to catch up every few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think while we certainly I think do have a dedicated listenership beyond WA, it's really, I think for a lot of people, I've had people come up to me and say how much it means to them to have something that actually talks about stuff here, because while there are people who I think have the ambition of a national podcast, West Australia is pretty far. So
yeah, it does tend to be kind of eastern states and then maybe a trip over to WA every now and then.
Yeah, whereas I reckon we probably are pretty well-rounded and we go over to the eastern states somewhat regularly.
I mean, you're more well-rounded than me because you go to Victoria and New South Wales and Queensland, whereas I have kind of fleeting trips, mainly Tassie and Northern
but
Territory.
you've done a lot in Tassie. You know, I think more than most people have, you know, on the East Coast.
Yeah. I wonder is there a Tassie hiking podcast? Sure there would be.
I don't know.
Who knows? So first question that I had down is, who were you in September 2017 when the first episode came out?
A much younger version of myself. So September 2017 actually was just when I was finishing up the bib. So I think there was like a rapid succession of things. Like you sort of pinpointed where that was in the scheme of like my life and our lives. And I think just finished the Bibbleman end to end, or was about to.
You're about to, because I listened to the first episode the other day and you were very excited for your finish in bailing up, not knowing what was going on.
Yeah, so I had that. I had, I was just about to do the Cape to Cape after that, and we were going to attempt the Stirling Ridge Walk, which didn't pan out in that trip. So that was where I was at. I would have just had like the first case of plantar fasciitis, which is a sign of things to come with the continuous time that I spent at physios. I was living in a rental. I was in a different job. So yeah, that was a long time ago. It was sort of the end of my time with that previous employer before the Commonwealth Games. And how about yourself?
I was also much younger and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I think that must have been, I'd just come back from Europe and I'd done my first like multi-day section of the bib, so things were starting to ramp up. A lot of the trips, like the highlight trips of Southwest WA I'd done, kind of Stirling Range, like Pemberton area. Had attempted a Cape to Cape but didn't really come off. I think I gave up after 2.5 days of poor planning leading to poor performance. But yeah, I was just a different guy, and I was still kind of understanding hiking as well. That was the thing, is, you know, my photography probably was nowhere near as like very different to what it is now, I'd probably say. Website was probably still different, but I'm kind of still the same person, like very laid back. If anything, and we'll talk about this later, have I become grumpier? Probably a definite on that one.
I'd say for me the other way around, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, actually, no, sorry, we had to talk about that now.
Oh, okay.
So following on from that, who are you now?
So I'm a father. I was married back then, but I am now a husband with a kid, soon to be 3-year-old. So yeah, life is quite different in that sense. But, you know, we're certainly keeping the adventures going. You know, we're doing family trips. So, you know, I think I alternate now with like more hardcore stuff that I do, which is by myself. And then stuff I do is with the family. And to answer the previous question, I think if you listen to the early episodes, someone said to me, they sent us an email and said that, you know, Don was like the grumpiest guy. And I'd say I'm probably mellowed out a lot. And part of it is just I'm resigned to the things that I was upset about before. Whereas I think that you've become more grumpy. And like, I've listened to some recent episodes and I was like, gee, I think we swap places there. So
yeah, maybe I'm just hiking the wrong trails. But we did get tagged in a very funny reel by a girl named Jessica, who's a tour guide all over Australia. And she was hiking the bib, and she'd been listening to Real Trail Talk, and she's walking along and she's like, you know, listening to Real Trail Talk, it feels like you're listening, like walking with friends and listening to them chat, and, you know, multiple friends if you've got happy Don, grumpy Don, sad Don.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, I'm not hiking the bib the way I was. So, when I was hiking it, it got to the point where it became sort of obligation, and I hate doing anything out of obligation. And, like I still find, like the kind of Jarrah forest where everything's just matchsticks extremely infuriating, but I choose not to hike that. And it makes me so much happier as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until some future plans maybe down the track, and then you become Grumpy Don again.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
It's all cyclical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely probably, I don't know, grumpy is one word, but probably cynical is a bit more on the nose. Just like pulling back the curtain and seeing how things work within the industry. Having joined boards and going to workshops and conferences and everything, you kind of, when you hear something when you're a bit younger and like it fills you with optimism, like, yeah, like I'd love for that to happen and like look at the industry grow and this and that, and then you kind of realize most of it's just empty promises and things that will never happen, or there's no funding, or the people aren't there to do it. Probably the prime example of that is the hiking strategy document. Like lots of work went into that, lots of people really enthusiastic, and it's produced nothing. Yeah. And like, yeah, behind the scenes, it doesn't look like much is going to happen in the future with that. Yeah.
And I think that my sort of answer to that cynicism is like, I just go hike over east, and it's just like, that's what it is. Yeah. If you guys will do some stuff, I will hike here. But until that time comes, it's over east for me. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I hope people still listen to us and don't think we're too grumpy. But yeah, I guess that's the real part of real trail talk sometimes. Yeah. Is it can't all be sunshine and roses.
You got to keep it 100, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah. So next question is, what was your favourite episode to record?
I reckon the International Women's Day episode was fun to record because it was very different. It was 4 people, which I think is like the record. We've never had more than 4 people. No. I don't know if we've done a 4-person episode again. We did.
Yeah, we've done a hiking draft and a dream bib one, yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen very often that we have 4 people, and I think that was maybe the first time we ever did 4.
I think so, yeah.
And also I just sat in the corner and just got to watch, which was awesome.
And I wasn't there, so bonus.
So yeah, that one would be, I'd say, to record, because I recorded it. Yeah. But what about you, Mark?
Probably a toss-up between, the Dream Bibbleman 2-parter that we did and the WA hiking draft. Mainly because you're just talking about things that you know and love. Yeah. And it was just an excuse to kind of, be with friends, which was Bonnie and Steve, and get a different perspective and have a bit of fun at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was an episode that, when you explained it to me, I was just like, what? I was really not I wasn't skeptical, but I was a bit like, I don't know about,
the draft one.
Yeah, I was a bit, maybe I was a bit skeptical, but it was actually a really fun episode to record, and some of the strategy, like clearly you thought about it a bit more than the rest of us. And I find it funny. I still think about the fact that like Steve chose Wireless Hill.
I know. And just the realization from Steve is like, all I do is hike the bib. I've not been to a lot of these places in like 20 years. Yeah. That was good fun. On that, what episode would you like a do-over on?
Oh, some of the early ones. I think that we didn't know what we were doing to start with. I remember recording the first episode and just doing so many takes of how do we start this episode, before we've eventually landed on hi and welcome to Real Trail Talk.
Listening back to that one, it's so weird because we talk about a topic like this. It was based on Albany and how good Albany was. So we talk about Bluff Knoll and then another hike, and then we go to the Poronga and then Albany, and then it's like back to the Stirling Range, and then we talk about it all over again. I'm like, oh, this is such bad podcasting.
Yeah. But, you got to start somewhere, and you can't expect to be great at something when you begin.
Yeah. I recently had someone comment on one of my posts saying I'm listening from episode 1 all the way through.
Yep.
And it took them a few weeks to listen to because it's like 99 episodes, probably averaging an hour, 2 hours. So that's a lot to get through. And I'm like, oh, that's really going to be a struggle for them for like the first 20 when we weren't that good.
Yeah, so if I could redo those, but hey, it's that's life, Yeah.
I would love to redo the Beerwoman series, mainly because I'd not done a lot of it. I think I'd only done maybe 1 or 2 sections when we actually recorded them. So I'm just mainly going off your blog being like, and so what was this campsite like? And tell me about the first part of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future when we've run out of ideas, we'll just redo the bib.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's your favourite guest that we've had on?
We've had some really good guests on. I really, of a recent one that I can think of, I really enjoyed getting Feral in. Kevin from Going Feral, because he's an interesting guy. We've been friends for a long time, and I think that you and I have been trying to get some of the people from the East Coast to come into the studio, and the fact that we were able to actually get him to come in was really good, and he had an interesting story to talk about as well. So yeah, that's one that I can remember off the top of my head. But how about you?
Well, before I get to mine, just Kevin, just for such a reserved guy, the way you talk about him, and he doesn't really like the spotlight. It was just such an intriguing episode to listen to his thoughts.
Oh yeah, he's so engaging, and he's just great to talk to. Yeah.
But for me, probably has to be Neighbour Steve.
Yeah.
We've had him on several times, but one episode that I really enjoyed having him on was the Walpole to Denmark Beerwoman section, and just like the banter between you two back and forth. He's not afraid to call you out on some of your stuff, and at that stage we kind of knew each other a little bit better than some of the earlier episodes. So there was a good back and forth there, and Steve's just he's a good sense of humor and very down to earth and very knowledgeable at the same time. Yeah,
definitely a real good guy, and I think he has an optimism that I sometimes envy. Yeah.
So I think we've talked about this before on another Q&A, but dream guests you would like to have on the podcast.
Oh, I reckon I'd love to get some other people from the East Coast. I think Kevin was a good sort of starting point. I think there's a lot of other really sort of big hikers over East that I'd love to get. No one in particular, but I think we've talked about getting we'd love to get Caro at some point. And there's a few other people as well. Dr. Kate Grarrock.
Doc Rock.
Yeah. We were going to get her on, and then timelines didn't match up, but at some stage, hopefully, it will happen.
Yeah. Same for me. Caro's a big one. She's kind of the go-to hiking celebrity over East, I think. Doc Rock as well. I'd asked previously. There's a lady who's walking the length of the Americas at the moment, Lucy Barnard, with her dog Wombat, and she was over in Perth for a talk in January, and I assumed incorrectly, and you should never assume because it makes an ass out of you and me, that she would only be in Perth for maybe a couple of days, and I was like, I don't want to burden her with, having to make time for a podcast, and I think you were very busy at that time as well, so I was like, I won't bring it up, I won't ask. And then, randomly, about a week ago, she messaged me saying, did we want to record a podcast? Is that something you wanted to do while I was over here? And she was over here for a few days. And she did Cambo's podcast as well. And I was like, oh, that was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So I messaged her back. I was like, when you're done and you're finished, I'm sure you've got another tour that you're going to be on. So we'll definitely catch up then. And there'll be a lot to break down in that.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, I'd love to get the king of guidebooks, Mr. John Chapman.
I mean, we did sort of tee that up because with the 50 multi-day walks of Australia book, we got the okay, but then, we kind of stalled on the technology to make that happen and actually commit to it. So
Yeah, but we should try and make that happen.
we will. Yeah, I think now that you've maybe got a bit more free time, now that a special project is done,
Yep.
we can look into that again.
Yep.
The last of my kind of questions is: do you listen to episodes back, and if so, do you have a favorite that really comes to mind?
I don't often, but I do sometimes. And there are a few that I'd say. So certainly, I think of the recent ones, just recency bias. But the one I recorded with Kevin was one that I really enjoyed recording and enjoyed editing because I think there was a time where you did the stuff when I was in Queensland, but the majority of the episodes are edited by me. And so sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to listen to it again after this.
Yeah.
And some of them are a chore to listen to as an editor. Because we've had a few where, they're like 2 hours. And I've had to cut it down to like a more reasonable time. And that can be extremely painful. But the Kevin one's one that I can remember as being one that I really thought was a pleasure to listen to. And there's a few older ones as well that I'd say... I listen to it and I go, that's a good one. How about you?
The year-end review ones I do listen to back every now and then, just to kind of hear what our thoughts were at that particular time and kind of who I was as well. And some people are like, why do you listen to yourself? I'm like, I don't really talk a lot, so it's fun to listen to them back. But the more recent one that I really, really do enjoy listening to, especially when I'm going out to do any kind of like hiking or if I'm on the bib, is the one we had Steve in to talk about the 25th anniversary walk.
That was a really good episode, yeah.
Just like, it's a good balance of fun, like a celebration of the bib, and then also kind of a few heavier moments in there where he talks about the emotions of, the Billman track, what it means to him and doing that end to end. And also when I'm doing maintenance, I'm going out to the place where I met them as they came through, and I can like pinpoint that spot on the track, like a little she oak grove on the top of one of the hills. I'm like, I remember meeting everyone there and seeing all their exhausted faces. That's probably one of my favorite episodes we've recorded. But then I'll just go and listen, like last year when I went to Kalbarri, I listened to the episode we recorded on those day hikes and the snorkeling ones where we had Siobhan on. So and those two are actually really, really good as well because she knows what she's talking about and she's got extensive knowledge of all the cool snorkeling spots in WA. So it's good to listen back. I enjoy it, and it's good to kind of hear that we weren't as terrible as maybe what I'd think we were back then. Obviously the early episodes were a bit hit and miss.
I mean, I find it hard to listen to the year in review ones and hear me talking about doing the Thorsby Trail every time. And still, to this day, having not done the Thorsby Trail.
Well, I always make a point when we record them to listen to the previous year's one, and I'm always like, what do you have planned for this year, Don? I'm going to do the Thorsby Trail. I'm going to go do this and that. I'm like, no, you're not. All right. So we'll get on to the listener question. So again, thank you very much for everyone who sent in a question. First one is, what trails are on your bucket list?
Well, the Thorsby Trail. No, okay. So, I think immediately I ticked off a really big one by having done the Traverse Sabine. That was one of my like top tier ones. But in the next few years, I've sort of switched to like real hardcore because Alyssa and Miles are not going to join me. So there's this sort of awkward period where Miles is not big enough to do some of those hikes. There'll be some family stuff we'll do, but as such, I'm doing stuff that I can do that will be stuff that I will do. So I've got a plan to do an overland in winter, which I'm really excited about doing. I want to do the Dusky track in New Zealand.
The muddy track.
Like the sandfly infested hellhole. It's a track that doesn't sound fun, not even like type 2 fun. It sounds like one that you finish and you go, I did it. And that's cool.
I remember when you said you wanted to do that, and Bonnie in our chat group was kind of interested, and I forwarded or screenshotted an article or something. I was like, "This is hell on earth. I'm not sure why I wanted to do this, but I'm happy I've completed it. Not that I had that experience."
I think you just get the satisfaction of completing, not
doing.
Yeah, so I've got that on the list. I think those are the two sort of immediate ones I can think of. I am actually thinking of doing a Western Arthurs at the end of 2027, maybe. See how I go with these other two hardcore ones. Yeah. But those are ones that are on my immediate radar. Certainly not at the moment thinking of doing anything in the Americas, particularly in North America.
Yeah.
And Europe again is like a long way off. Just having a kid really limits where we can travel, and I'd say, as such, Australia, New Zealand is about where I would be going.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, that's the thing is, like, I've had lots on the bucket list. It's one of my flaws is planning to do stuff in the future. It's kind of, I just do stuff not in the moment, but kind of very short-term planning is probably my biggest flaw. Or sorry, long-term planning is the biggest flaw. But yeah, there is tentative plans with my friends group to go to Europe next year. So I figure while I'm there, I would love to do something in the Dolomites.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the Cinque Terre, but maybe look somewhere kind of similar but not quite as touristy. And then, on Instagram, I just keep getting fed all these reels about hikes in the UK. I'm just like, I would love to do that, which is where we're going to spend most of our time. So, yeah, depending on, and I've probably said this a million times, my job and whether or not I get made redundant, I may have a lot of time up my sleeve, so we'll figure that out when it comes. But yeah, lots to do there, and obviously the big ticket items like Patagonia. I still haven't been to New Zealand. I would love to do that, like to spend a couple of months there hiking.
Yeah.
But it comes down to I work full time, have two dogs that kind of I would like to spend a lot more time with them as they're getting into their elder years, and I don't have a lot of time left with them, so that's a big concern as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And they obviously limit travel and how long I can go for, which is, not a bad thing. I love having them in my life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So lots of considerations, but yeah. I've hopefully still got a lot of time left on this earth to complete the bucket list.
Yeah.
And the Larapinta. People keep telling me I should do the Larapinta, and I would love to do it. It's just, when do I get 2 weeks at a specific time of the year to do it?
That's right. So yeah, if all goes well, I should be doing it in 2028, I think. But, I don't lock these down because I know what happens. Thorsman Trail.
We'll be recording the 200th episode in 2031, and Donna will be like, I really want to do the Larapinta. This year there won't be massive floods or...
No, 2031 I'll be saying, I'm going to do the Thorsman Trail this year.
Although at least there's kind of... actually, because most of your Thorsman Trail trips have been cancelled due to... nothing to do with the trail. It's more like, what was it, COVID and injuries? Work was one of them, maybe.
One of them was, part of it was we were planning on a kid, so we didn't want to lock things down for a few years. And then when we did lock it down, we're like, let's just make plans. Who cares? We'll lock it down. One year we couldn't get a booking because it just booked out. Then the next year was COVID, and the year after that was COVID, and then the next year after that, it's like, well, I have a 1-year-old, so that's not going to happen. Yeah,
maybe one day.
One day, yeah.
Best hiking advice you've been given?
I reckon the episode that I did with Ferrell, I asked him about, like what do you, how do you end up doing this? And he's like, what you're doing is right. And, like just that advice from someone who I really respect and admire, I think was really nice to have that. Yeah. How about you?
This one I racked my brain quite a while to try and figure out if I could remember any advice I'd ever been given that kind of really hit home. And not really. Like, I'm sure I've met hundreds of hikers that have had fantastic advice. But it's more kind of confirmation of stuff you've figured out along the way. So like hiking very much is, and because I do it alone as well, is very much a kind of self-learning journey. And a lot of it is you're hiking with the wrong gear, or you're hiking too much, or you're pushing yourself too hard. So you kind of learn those things along the way. But yeah, it's just kind of gathering lots of general advice from people I've met over the years. And then putting in my own experiences in with that to kind of form how I hike and what I do hike. So yeah, I think, but one of them that does stick out is, and we've kind of not mocked this, but had a bit of fun with it, is when Jacko says it's just walking. And like you boil it down to the essence of, yes, it is just walking, but there's like a whole lot that goes into it. But in the end, that's why you're out there. Like it's not because you've got a fancy new tent or your shoes weigh 50 grams less than this other model. It's you're out there because you enjoy walking.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like Hike Your Own Hike, which we did an episode of, and Jacko didn't like it. But I think Hike Your Own Hike certainly has, I think, grown a connotation of sort of like you say hike your own hike with like a sarcastic smile, and like it's it's like it but really I do agree with you that it is, you have to discover a lot of it yourself, because your own body is your own limit.
And the Hike Your Own Hike kind of, it can be an excuse to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the, I don't owe anyone anything. It's like, well, you actually do. You're part of a community, a society. Your behaviors matter. So you can't just walk along with a Bluetooth speaker blasting music. That's not hiking your own hike.
Yeah.
But like in the true essence of it, it's what you enjoy. How you go about it is important.
Yeah, for sure.
So sort of similar to that, the biggest / hardest lesson learned over the years of hiking, and how did it impact you going forward?
I reckon that the biggest thing for me has been how much time I've spent in physio. Just the amount of time that I've spent on that has been probably the most expensive single item that I've spent. So, I think certainly taking care of yourself is really important. That's something that I think is worth the money, and also worth actually being preventative about.
Similar kind of vein. I've not had as many injuries as you, although I did have an Achilles thing that did take me out for a month, and I did learn, yes, you probably should stretch and do a lot of kind of movement activities and circulation activities as you get a little bit older. But the biggest one for me has been around my feet and the shoes that I select. So previously I just used to hike with blisters, because I'm like, you're doing a multi-day, this is what you're going to get, not realizing that your shoe selection and sock selection actually really matters quite a lot. And as soon as I realized, you buy half a size to a size bigger than you normally would. Don't tighten your laces as hard as they will go. Finding the right socks that work for me, that kind of stuff. That really, really made a difference, because you're not worrying about your feet. You're not hobbling into towns. Like, you're not worried about stopping, because stopping means your feet get sore and then you have to get going again and push through the pain barrier. So that's the biggest lesson I've learned, and I'm a much happier hiker now. I don't have to worry about that stuff as much.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely worth saying, because I think people think that blisters are a necessity of hiking, and they're absolutely not.
Yeah. And also on that, don't post your feet pictures to the internet, to Facebook groups. It's just the wrong thing to do.
I don't mind
them. I think we've probably talked about this before, but what level of concern should walkers be aware of snakes on their trail walks?
So I'm going to get on my soapbox about this and say that I reckon that Australian hikers are excessively... I hate the excessive bravado of like everywhere we go, there's things that can gonna kill ya, and it is bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. And like, yes, there is a certain amount of carefulness you have to have, because, yes, they are dangerous, but your chances of being bitten by a snake are not very high. And particularly in the southwest where we hike, or even in Tasmania, a lot of the main places, tiger snakes are the main snake, and they are not that aggressive. Yes, they're very venomous. If you get bitten, definitely see to that and, push the PLB button. Don't keep hiking with that, because that is actually very dangerous. But your chances of being bitten by them are not very high. Like I've seen in a day on the south coast 20, and they all just disappeared. If you give them some space, give them some respect, they will be fine. They will go away. Conversely, if you go to New Zealand, you have like a 1000% chance of being bitten by sandflies. And yes, they're not dangerous, but they are freaking annoying. And and the certainty is really like your chance of being bitten by one, I'd say is certainly 100%, and you will know pain from them because they will definitely bite you. So it's a lot of, I think the bravado thing has to stop, and it's, yes, be respectful, be the correct level of concerned, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And the end of rant.
I'll add to the rant, because I hate when, Americans or whoever ask, like, oh, how dangerous is Australia and this and that. And I just can't stand the whole, like, oh, there's drop bears and this and that. I'm like, I just roll my eyes. Like, it's not funny anymore. But yeah, it does, as you say, like, you just have to be aware. And I think I've only ever seen one snake while hiking in the Perth Hills, and I've done a lot of hiking in Perth.
Yeah.
And it was up in Yanchep National Park. And it had its head down a limestone hole, and I would have stepped on it had I not been paying attention. I just kind of noticed it the last second and went like, whoops, and stepped over it. But most of the time when I'm hiking, like, I've seen most of my snakes on the south coast.
Yeah.
And they will see you much sooner than you'll see them, and they'll just slither off into the bush. And occasionally you'll get ones that are curled up, and they just want to be there. They're not worried about you. You scoot around them.
Yep.
If they do come at you, which I've had one in Fitzgerald River kind of chase me a little bit, like, you just stomp your feet or you get out the way. Just be mindful. That's probably the best way. Don't be scared and let that put you off going hiking.
Yeah, for sure.
Although recently, speaking about snake bites, there was at the Bibra Lake park run, which I go to, someone got bitten by a snake walking from because the finish line, the start line aren't at the same spot. So they'd parked at the finish line, walked to the start line, and just thought they'd stepped on a stick and had come up and hit them.
Oh, no.
They did the trail run, so like...
While bitten.
40 minutes of having it, and then they're in their car looking at it was still sore, and there were 2 puncture marks there, and luckily it was a dry bite.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, and I've seen snakes doing that park run, but yeah, you don't think about actually getting bitten.
Yeah, I mean, that is a bit of a snake-infested place, so...
Actually, it's just the grasses are
yeah.
so... Yeah. And that's the one time I've actually been, not scared, but really hyper-aware of snakes, is on the Nullakai Peninsula when there was really thick grass. And I was just shuffling really slowly to try and, like, make my presence known, because that's the areas they really love.
Yeah, for sure.
How optimistic are you about Perth getting new hiking trails?
Not at all.
Grumpy Don, Grumpy
Not
Mark.
at all. Not at all. So, yeah, look, we talked about this earlier. I think for a long time I was really angry about this. Like, really angry about it. And the mellowness of me now is not because I'm satisfied. It's because I'm resigned to the way it is. And if you look at New South Wales are spending $650 million in park upgrades, and most of that is on trails. Like, pretty much every year there's a new trail opening. It's just like an exciting time for that. Like, it's an arms race, and I feel like it's sort of unfair to Tasmania, because Tasmania doesn't have the money. New South Wales is a rich state. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to spend some money and build great trails, and we're going to get some of the piece of the pie. And then you look at New Zealand, which is you know, at the moment, economically, they're really struggling. But look at their trails. The quality level is so good. And when you meet people who travel around Australia, they always say, like, the two states that they're really most impressed by are probably Tasmania and Western Australia. I've met many people who are doing, you know, the Great Lap, and they say that they're the two favorite states. And we just do not build trails that are worthy of the spectacularness of our state, and they don't show it off to the best. And as a result, you know, I'm just going to spend most of my tourism dollars in other states until this is fixed, and I just don't see when it will be fixed.
Yeah. I think the only trail that people will travel to WA to do is probably the Bibbulmun.
Yeah.
And maybe tack on the Cape to Cape while they're here. And that's about it. Like, whereas you could say in Tassie, you're going to the Overland, you're going to do the Three Capes, you're going to do Frenchman's, Walls of Jerusalem. So many trails, even just going over to do Cradle Mountain. Like, not many people are coming over to just do Bluff Knoll.
That's right, yeah. And I think as well, like, I've got some friends I made in New Zealand when I was hiking there, and they're coming over. And I was trying to think of, like, what's worthy of them seeing. And, like, you know, for us, as you like to say, us basic bitches, you know, the Stirling Range is amazing.
Yeah.
And look, botanically, yes. But from a mountain perspective, if you're from New Zealand, you're not going to come to do Bluff Knoll, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of weird. Like Perth, just focusing on Perth, I think some of our best trails are actually on Rottnest, and they don't ever get talked about. Like, I look at the stats for my website, and guaranteed every single month, all of those trails, bar the Gabi Karnini, which is the one that goes to Geordie Bay, all of them will be single digits for the month in page views.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Like, that's the most recent trail investment we've had that isn't John Forrest, which was just cutting a track to make another loop and then taking away another hiking trail. Like,
yeah. I will say that was really good. That walk is, like, the quality of the trail is excellent. The Little Eagle View. But, you know, like, it's such a small, just, like, token offering.
Yeah.
When we just don't have really great trails. And, you know, we've done many walk GPS trails.
And they are excellent.
Yeah.
Like, you put a mark trail through there, not even, like, clearing the bush and the undergrowth, just trail, like, I think Dave suggested this, is just put markers hanging from trees. So you're not disturbing anything, and then eventually a pad will probably wear through.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of those walks and you're like, why is this not a trail? Like, yeah, it's just weird. But yeah, going back to the question, yeah, I mean, Roger Cook's election promises, there was nothing to do with trails. And I know he announced like this $200 million outdoors upgrade thing, but you read through it and it's like $70 million for a marina in Geraldton and this and that, and trails got maybe like $10 million, and it was mostly to do with signage and a lookout or something like that.
It's all just like promoting what exists, or improving markings on what already exists, or improving the trail that already exists, and it's not on making anything new. And you know, you talk about to people who I think got into this during COVID, and I remember going to trails like 60 Foot Falls, and it was just jam packed. There's too many people there. I did, when I filmed for the YouTube channel, the Kitty's Gorge. When I first did that in 2008, myself and the friend who did it, we saw maybe 2 other people the whole day.
Yeah.
It was chock-a-block the whole way to the end.
Yeah.
So many groups do it. And so I don't feel like the market has really understood just how big a growth it is and have gone, well, let's make trails that are worthy of people wanting to do it. And I feel like every time they build a new trail, they're like, you know, it's just not based on the reasons that people go to see things. Like, Kitty's Gorge is great because of how beautiful the waterfalls and the Gurulong Brook are. Eagle View is beautiful because there's waterfalls and there's the creeks. And those are the things that really make Western Australian hiking, that and wildflowers. And yet the focus is like, oh yeah, we'll just find like some really just basic looking jarrah forest. It's all burnt and crap and it's all regrowth from maybe 50 years ago. But you're so lucky to have this. And it's just not good enough.
Yeah. And another reason for my pessimism is Water Corp have a thing called Rule 13 where that governs recreational use within the water catchment areas. And the water catchment areas in Perth basically are all the good hiking areas you want to go see. Alcoa and South 32 are allowed to mine right up to that and put in all their pipes that leak poison everywhere into Perth's water supply, but Walker's not allowed in there. And that was coming up for review, I think maybe this year. And there was a lot of hope within the industry that, yes, finally we'll get to talk some sense into them and they'll realise walking and mountain biking, not that impactful to our water supply. Maybe we'll get access to that land. And I think late last year they just decided, it's not going up for review anymore and we're just going to not talk about it. So all the good land for new hiking trails is basically not usable, according to Water Corp. So there's going to be no money invested in that. Because you think not how good, but Mundaring Weir, that area, you could have a nice 3-4 day loop around Mundaring Weir. Using the bib and then, looping back. But that area's now, it's just forest that's locked away and then all the machines to go in to manage the pine plantations that are randomly put through there. That's all that's allowed in. So, there's not a whole lot of places in Perth that will be suitable for like fantastic new trails. But again, there are areas like Dave has one that's kind of near Ellisbrook area. I think Banyola Regional Park goes to a great waterfall. Wouldn't take much to put in a fantastic trail there. Not happening. Even Wollongong Gorge, that's just an out and back along a vehicle track, and that's it. There's hills around there that could have heaps of fantastic trails, but nothing gets done. And there's no funding, there's no impetus to get it done. And part of it is DBCA are underfunded and Sport and Rec kind of are underfunded, but hiking doesn't get the money that football and netball and cricket and that does, even though the participation numbers are top 5 in terms of people doing it and saying that they enjoy a hike or a walk. It's just disappointing. And as you said, you're resigned, I'm resigned. It's just nothing's going to happen, and it'll be a pleasant surprise if anything does happen, but I'm not looking forward to anything in the near future.
Absolutely.
So on a more positive note, what is the best time of the year to see wildflowers and fungi in the southwest?
Okay, so let's just say Southwest Land Division.
Because, the southwest corner of WA.
I think a lot of people think that the southwest is south of Perth, but that's not technically true. There's like a line you can literally see in space, and the Southwest Land Division starts around Kalbarri till Esperance sort of way, Cape Arid. And it's really about the time of year because it kind of travels down, right? It
does. I've been thinking about this the last couple of years as I get more and more into wildflowers and orchids, is early season kind of June, July, north of the state's fantastic, and all of the orchid species that are kind of generally around that time flower earlier up north, and then it kind of goes down. And then you can get to kind of September and then they kind of almost do a big loop and then end back on the south coast where you'll still get orchids and wildflowers in November, December. So kind of heading north or starting north and visiting places like Kalbarri and like Lesueur, Wongan Hills, that kind of stuff earlier in the season. Is better, and then move south and kind of August, September in the more traditional southwest, like Margaret River, Pemberton, like Collie area.
And certainly I feel different species. So certainly I think both you and I as gardeners, you get a better understanding. Like there's sort of two cohorts of flowering. There's the winter flowering that's sort of, start in like June, July, and sort of, they peak and finish in September. And then there's the second sort of cohort that started in October. So like September, October is like the peak of the peak.
Yeah.
And then that October cohort can go all the way through to December, January, depending on the species. And generally speaking, as you start north and you work your way down, like sometimes, like I've done hikes in December, January, and the wildflowers on the south coast are incredible.
Yeah.
And sometimes better than October when you think that they'll be great. And so really it's like, I think if you don't live in WA, you're not lucky in that sense. Like we can go at any time and see it.
Yeah.
And as you were saying about Wongan Hills really, August, September is probably the peak for a lot of other stuff. But the verticordias peak in November. So you get like a second flush of
I think
beauty.
that's the thing. Like some trails or areas or reserves, you'll get that one species that you're like, wow, this is, as you say, sledgehammer to the face.
Yeah.
But then, others, August, September is really peak time. But there's one guy who's kind of a legend in the botany wildflower scene in WA called Terry Dunham.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm always fascinated because he's always travelling around the state. And he'll be on the south coast around the Stirling Range or areas around there in February, March. And he just posts these collages of all these flowers I found. I was like, wow, like,
yeah, like
there's so much.
He just posted like orchids that he saw in March.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap.
Yeah, there's only like a few that do flower in March, but he's found them.
And there's like 20 of them.
Yeah. Because my reference is always what I see on my maintenance section, and kind of late Feb to April, May is the kind of very limited time of the year. So I'll see maybe like 2-3 wildflower species while I'm out there if I'm lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you go through, it's, especially the last year, it's been fantastic to go out every month and see the different varieties come through. And sometimes you only have 1, 2, 3 week window where you'll see them.
Yeah.
And then they're gone. And that's why I haven't seen a lot of the stuff in the kingdom that I, saw last year. Like white fairy orchids. Like there's a tree where I want my ashes to be scattered, and I lunch there every single time I'm out there. And then just last year, I'm like, oh, there's a colony of white fairy orchids.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. But yeah. And also fungi. So we probably should talk about fungi. June, July is probably your best chance when it's the coldest and the wettest.
Yeah.
But occasionally you will get like the ghost fungi, which are famous in WA in kind of April, May.
Yeah, I was going to say like sometimes in like autumn, in like the Karri forest, the fungi can be quite impressive. But it really depends on the part of WA.
But then there are some species that I see year round. So my last maintenance trip, which was March, I saw this white fungi growing. It was quite a wet area, but like it's had a whole summer of heat, and it's still there. So but peak fungi season, June, July, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm still no good at identifying fungi.
Oh, neither. But I mean, look, if we were better at it, I think there's a lot that would be commercialized and eaten. But mushrooms are really difficult.
Yeah, even the experts are like, that could be the one that like kills you, or it could be the one that you can eat. Like it's really hard to tell. Yeah. And all the time on iNaturalist, you'll get the comment like, oh, did you bring a mirror with you so you can like photograph the underside of the fungi? I'm like, no, I left my mirror at home, but I actually think I might start taking one out.
Yeah.
And speaking of fungi, what role do fungi play in supporting the ecosystems of the forests?
Well, I mean, with orchids, you kind of need fungi in order for them to flower.
Yeah.
So, they're really important for that. In some other species, it's not so good. Sometimes, so I heard someone was talking about how the heat and the lack of water at the moment, some carries are just like spontaneously being infected with like fungi, like they're dead, because it's just such unusual patterns of weather that we're getting.
Yeah.
And that's not good. But in other ways, they're really important for the forest.
Yeah, I think, I mean, their main role is because what they feed on is decaying matter. So, most of the time you'll find them on a fallen log or a branch or something that's dead, and it'll just take over. And depending on where the spores have gotten to is how prolific it'll be. And that's one thing that I just fascinated there's no market for it, and you can't buy fungi spores. And I kind of understand why, because some they don't know what it is, but I would love to grow fungi in my garden.
Yeah.
And like when I had my last place, I bought some railway sleepers, and they'd obviously been out in the bush somewhere for many, many years and had gotten fungi spore on them. And all of a sudden, some bracket fungi started sprouting. I was like, "This is what I want in my garden!" Like, natural fungi to kind of decompose the leaf litter. So that'd be kind of cool. But nothing exists for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I get a fair bit in my garden, but that's just by chance, not by design.
Yeah, I kind of get the occasional one, but you're like, I don't know why you've sprouted and what variety you are, but. Yeah, because there's some really interesting fungi. I used to love June, July in the old sanctuary of Pi out near Dwelling Up, because you'd get coral fungi and you'd get, like, I call them Mario mushrooms, the kind of red ones, and just all these different ones. I was always fascinated by them, and they're so photogenic as well, because it's that time of year where the light's really good. It's not as strong, it's not as harsh. You usually got cloud cover. Yeah, I used to love photographing that area. This question is from my eldest niece, who thankfully has included quite a few of these questions. But she says, "Why are all of my mum's favourite flowers actually weeds?"
Because they're not from here, it would be the answer, right?
Yeah. So this comes from, last year I kind of tried to introduce my family to a few walks around where they live in Bunbury and take them out, and that kind of evolved into the family chat group whenever we were out on a walk, kind of taking pictures of flowers and saying, "Oh, this is what I found and what's this?" And most of the time there'd be natives, and my sister would send through like 6 photos, and there'd be like a cowslip orchid, a pink fairy, a few other wildflowers, and then she'd send through one. And she's like, "This one's my favourite," and it's like a lilac or something,
Oh, no.
like a weed. I'm like, "Oh, Kelly, like you just like all the weeds." Maybe it's her English heritage coming through, but just all these like invasive species, and they always tend to be her favourite. So that was quite funny.
Yeah.
Even when we were out, actually, I did take her out to do a maintenance trip, and she was impressed by all the wildflowers. So it was good to show her some natural native flowers and orchids.
And I think that's a really good sort of, I really think that people should grow Western Australian natives. I mean, I think Australian natives, I'm not, I don't discount the rest of the country as good stuff, but Western Australia is, if you look at people who live in Victoria and New South Wales and Queensland, they are absolutely envious of the stuff that we have. And I don't think that we respect and understand that as Western Australians, that we have like these crappy soils that actually are great for growing amazing plants. And, I think people sometimes think of West Australian plants as being not as spectacular as they are, but they really are. If you love flowers, and you want a garden that's really just a sledgehammer to the face of beautiful, we've got a lot of the really best stuff.
And, I mean, they're not easy, as we've discovered, growing our own. There's a lot of heartbreak, but one of the saddest places I can think to go is the garden section of Bunnings. And you see people loading up their trolleys with like blocket plants and like generic Australian natives that aren't native to WA.
Yeah.
You're like, what are you doing? Like, you're just picking rubbish because you think it'll be fast growing, it'll block out the neighbours, and like walking around where I live in Hilton, like it's a fantastic suburb, but some of the gardens they've put no effort into.
Yeah.
And it's just generic rubbish.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's just amazing species in WA and so many fantastic nurseries.
Yeah.
They probably deserve a shout out. And we are going to do an episode a bit later on about native gardens.
Yeah.
But yeah, just for now, like Xanthoria, Although they do have a lot of non-WA plants, and one of my pet peeves is nursery names for plants instead of
I'm okay
what they're
with
actually
them.
called.
Yeah. I think. Look, I think that there are good stuff that grows over east, but it frustrates me when there's, like, I'm desperately looking for two Grevillea species, Grevillea brunweniae and Grevillea caliantha. Now, caliantha is critically endangered, so I understand why it's difficult to get, but brunweniae should be possible to get anywhere. And yet, I can get maybe 20 varieties of crosses between Bipinnater feeder, which is a WA species, and Banksii, which is a Queensland species. And it's like, just settle on one. Like, superb is superb. Like, just pick that one.
Yeah.
That's the one that we should have in the nursery trade. The others, don't worry about it. Let's get Brunweniae into the nursery trade,
And just as a warning, this is what the gardening pod will be about, just Donovan listing off Latin names and everything. And me giving a blank look, which you won't be able to see. But also Australian Native Nursery, they mainly deal with WA species.
Yep.
As you found out, the people there can be a bit abrasive.
Yeah.
That's part of the charm to me.
don't go there expecting that their stock list is accurate, because if you bring it to their attention, they will get really upset about it. The other one that I really love is the Northern Suburbs Wildflower Society Nursery.
Yeah.
Their stuff is a little bit temperamental because they don't harden them. Like, they're all grown indoors, but they grow interesting stuff. So, I really, between those and, of course, the Kings Park sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, look out for a future pod about that.
Yep.
And the next question is, what doesn't the Bibbulmun track have that you think it needs?
Less burnt jarrah.
Yeah, this one's hard because the Bibbulmun itself doesn't, like, it's an experience onto itself. You're not going there expecting overland track levels of huts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need that. Like, the Bibbulmun is the Bibbulmun, and it's right that it has the 3-sided shelters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think mainly just more of what they're doing at the moment. Like, the last few years with the support volunteers crew, they're really trying to get it off vehicle tracks.
Yeah.
More of that. Just kind of, there's just lots of fantastic little improvements that are going on. So a key one that's happening at the moment is when you get off Mount Cook and you hit the power lines, you don't just walk down the power lines road. They're going to take you off that. Like, little things like that, I think, is really all it needs. And
yeah,
just,
for sure.
Like, it doesn't need to be big and fancy and expensive. It just needs to be funded well enough that the Bibbulmun Track Foundation can keep doing the amazing job that they do and just promote itself as, the premier long-distance hiking experience in WA.
Yeah. I am sort of half joking when I say less burnt jarrah, but I also think managing it as a tourism asset is a really big thing that it really needs to improve, because they treat it in this very utilitarian fashion. They treat it like forestry, and it shouldn't be treated like that, because people want to see something that's going to be enjoyable. Like, a lot of people talked about Boat Harbour, the prescribed burn that went through there, and it was just blackened hellscape.
Yeah.
That is not good enough for a world-class hiking trail. I don't expect it to be as perfectly manicured as a shorter trail, because obviously a shorter trail, you can pick the best spots and it's not going to be, there's not going to be any compromise, but we shouldn't be compromising on the quality. And something else that I've often thought would be great is if they had a window where if you were to hike in the school holidays, guaranteed that there's no deviations, no diversions because of prescribed burns. And if you start in, say either like in late August or late September, and you're hiking at a single hut speed, that they guarantee that you can walk the track and there's no diversions. Other than for, like, obviously if there's a bushfire and they can't help it, sure.
Yeah.
If there's flooding in the Pingarup Plains and it's beyond what is safe, sure, have a deviation. But for a trail that is supposed to be world class and is, you know, promoted as like a premier hiking trail in Australia, do not have a prescribed burn on the trail during that time. And if you could say, let's guarantee that if you started it in August, you'll get through, and after that that cohort is through, sure, you can have the burn, but just give people a window of maybe like 1 or 2 weeks. Where if you started during this time, and if you hiked hut to hut, just single hutting, you can expect that you'll be able to hike it through. Because I don't think anyone who hikes it in September can hike without a diversion. There's always some prescribed burn diversion that happens at that time, and I think it's not good enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother issue about, like, should they be burning in spring anyway? Because that's when all the wildlife have their young, they can't escape all the large-scale burning that they do. And it'd be fine if they just went through by hand like they do in their promotional videos.
Yeah.
You know, we care for the forest, and this is how careful we are, and it's just, no, we'll light up a massive section and send you on a 40-kilometre diversion, which really, really annoys people who have spent all this money flying to WA to do the trail.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that's not the Bib Track Foundation's fault. That's DBCA, and I know the Bib Track Foundation really object to the large-scale burning and the shutting down of the trail and the diversions, but, yeah. I mean, that's a battle that's currently being fought with the WA Forest Alliance, and hopefully, like the end to native logging, they get some headway with that as well.
Yeah,
or at least a review of the prescribed burning policies.
Yeah.
Maybe charges in some of the huts, the more open ones where you can put one solar panel on the roof.
Yeah, I guess
fun.
The problem is, you know, like the criminal deros who come in and destroy stuff.
Yeah, actually, yeah, on that. But these are all kind of DBCA problems where things like the huts and the trail in certain places should be pretty much locked out to walkers only.
Yeah.
But I mean, they do spend a lot of money sometimes on big gates like they have on the Wilman-Bilya, and people just rip them out or drive around them. So maybe society should just be better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have said this before that, you know, I think that it's not a user pays system, it's an abuser pays a system, and that they should fine the shit out of anyone who does stuff like that. Like, they should have people out there on weekends patrolling and hand out a $2,000 fine that pays for that person's wage, and then you stop people doing it.
Yeah. One last thing the Bib should have is the suggestion they had on the Dream Bilderman pod, where it goes through Torndirrup National Park and then under Albany Harbour via Persplex.
The first bit I agree with. The second bit, maybe not.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. And last question, which is a Donovan-only question. How has parenthood changed hiking for you?
Oh, it's certainly changed hiking for me in a lot of ways. I think as a result of the position I'm in, you know, I've certainly done more hardcore hiking. I've done a lot more solo hiking as a result. Like, I'm not really a solo hiker. I always hiked with Alyssa before. So recently that's certainly been a thing. But then also, when I do hike with Alyssa and Miles, like, it's a very different experience. You know, I think that the wonder that a kid has in the world is just amazing, and like, you just want to make your kid love nature.
And there's a lot riding on Miles loving nature right now.
There is, you know, because, like, you know, I think one of the things I want to do is with Miles is from 8 to 18, I want to do a section of the Bibbulmun track with him every year and finish it, you know, like when he's, you know, a man, basically. He'll have grown up. And that's, you know, that's a big project, and it's something that, you know, I have this desire to do. But beyond that, I just want him to, you know, I think as a parent, it's on me to instill the right values. And for me, the right values are a love for nature, a love for the environment, and that's really important to me. And that's something that, you know, drives a lot. Like this weekend, we've got a day free. I'm going to go take him out, and I want him to enjoy his time out in the bush. We spend a lot of time at Kings Park as well. You know, he loves Banksias. He loves a lot of wildflowers. So yeah, it's certainly the education side of it, of like teaching him about, you know, like this is a eucalypt. You know, the whole Latin name is because the caps, you know, the flowers are hidden.
Yeah.
And that's what the name means, and it's a well hidden flower, and it opens up, because he asked me, he's like, oh, what is this? He found like a little cap, and I explained to him. He said, oh, thank you for explaining that to me, Dad. And
have you explained why some of them are called horrida? Because they're horrible.
Actually, it's because they're spiky, not because they're horrible, but they often are horrible for that reason. Yeah. So yeah, there's, you know, I do try to explain those things and instill the values of loving nature, of loving the outdoors at a young age, and yeah, hopefully he'll carry that through life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that with, like, because obviously I don't have children, I probably never will, but taking my nieces out and eventually my nephew is, seeing it through their eyes, trying to teach them a little bit about maybe what they don't see in normal life. Like, I didn't really have that as a kid. Like, we went out, and nature to us was like a friend's bush property. And did we respect it? Probably not as much as we should, but like trying to, give them a love of nature that maybe I didn't have as a kid. And explaining things to them, like, you know, this is this flower and this is why fungi exist and all of that. So that's, it's interesting taking people out, especially younger people, and seeing it from their eyes, and it just adds a new perspective to what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like my parents, they were big road trip people, so we went down south a lot, but they weren't hikers, so their engagement was a bit less deep, I guess, than mine. But certainly I'd say, you know, my origin story in the Bibbulmun came about because we always went down south. Yeah. We always went to Pemberton for holidays, or Albany for holidays. And that stuck with me, and I hope that sticks with Miles through his life. Yeah, for sure.
I think he's got a pretty good head start. I mean, if he can already identify certain plants at age 3, he's probably going to be a botanist.
Yeah, well, you can say, you know, he knows grevilleas and he knows Banksias. He sometimes gets a bit confused with those two, but he understands, you know. So, yeah. And he can spot a koala bell, so that's
not many people can.
It's pretty advanced for a 3-year-old.
Yeah, cool. All right, so that is the end of the 100th episode. Karis and I did do the maths on this the other day. It does equal 1 episode a month since we started.
That's
pretty good hit rate, considering we haven't been as prolific in the last few months. Actually, last couple of years.
Yeah.
As should be. But yeah, hopefully going forward, we've got a few ideas, and if we can get some technology sorted, we will have some over the internet guests.
Yeah, for sure. You know, both of us, I think, post-COVID, we've sort of gotten over the funk of that time period, and there's things that we're doing. So there's interesting things to talk about, because I think one of the things that we did take a pause specifically because I felt like there was just nothing worthy of us talking about, and that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, I think, we've got some ideas written on a whiteboard. There's some good episodes coming up, so yeah, stay tuned for that. And again, thanks for everyone for listening. It's been amazing to hear comments, and you know, it may not be the most interesting of podcasts to most people, but the ones who really enjoy it really do enjoy it. So thank you very much for listening.
Yep, and cheers to
100 more.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Real Trail Talk, then please rate us on whatever platform you're currently listening to us on. Ratings really help us to reach an audience, especially those who are looking to learn about the outdoors in Western Australia and Australia in general.
If you had any questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com or contact us through our social media channels. Thanks again, and stay tuned for our next episode.